Lisa had always been the type of person who planned everything. Her morning coffee at exactly 7:15 a.m. Her work clothes laid out the night before. Even her grocery shopping happened every Sunday at 2 p.m. sharp. At 34, she worked as a marketing manager at a tech company in the city, and her life looked perfect from the outside. Her apartment matched her personality, clean, organized, and safe. The walls were painted in soft beige colors. Every book stood perfectly straight on the shelves. Even her throw pillows were arranged at exact angles on the sofa. Friends often joked that her place looked like a magazine photo, but Lisa liked it that way. Control made her feel secure. Every morning, she would stand in front of her bathroom mirror, brushing her teeth and checking her appearance. She had learned to see all the things she didn't like about herself. The small scar on her shoulder from a childhood accident, the way her hips curved, the freckles across her nose that makeup couldn't quite cover. These little details had become big worries over the years. Lisa's work life was just as controlled as her home life. She arrived at the office early, stayed late, and never spoke up in meetings unless she was absolutely certain about something. Her boss respected her careful approach, but sometimes Lisa wondered if she was invisible. She watched younger colleagues share bold ideas and take risks while she stayed quiet in the corner. One Thursday evening, as Lisa sorted through her mail, she found an envelope with her name written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a card with a painting of a woman surrounded by soft light. The woman in the painting looked confident and peaceful, nothing like how Lisa felt most days. The card was from Maya, her college roommate from 10 years ago. They had lost touch after graduation, as people often do when life takes them in different directions. Maya had always been the opposite of Lisa. Bold, creative, and unafraid to try new things. While Lisa studied business and marketing, Maya had pursued art. The message inside the card was short but powerful. I'm teaching figure drawing classes now at the Community Art Center. I need someone brave to model for my advanced students. I thought of you immediately. Remember when we used to talk about doing something that scared us? This could be that thing. Think about it. At the bottom, Maya had added her phone number and the address of the art studio. Lisa's first reaction was to laugh. Her model for art students? The idea seemed impossible. She had spent years learning how to hide behind professional clothes and careful makeup. The thought of being seen by strangers, really seen, made her heart race with anxiety. She put the card in her kitchen drawer and tried to forget about it. But over the next few days, Maya's words kept coming back to her. Someone brave. When was the last time anyone had called Lisa brave? When was the last time she had felt brave? That weekend, Lisa found herself walking past the Community Art Center. It was housed in an old brick building with large windows.
Through the glass, she could see people painting and drawing.
They looked focused and happy, lost in their creative work. She stood on the sidewalk for 15 minutes just watching. On Sunday night, curiosity got the better of her. Lisa sat at her laptop and started researching figure drawing. She learned that it was an old artistic tradition, going back hundreds of years. Artists studied the human form to understand light, shadow, and proportion. The websites she visited talked about the beauty of the human body as art, not as something to be judged or criticized. She read stories from people who had modeled for art classes. Many of them talked about how the experience had changed their relationship with their own bodies. They described feeling seen and accepted in a way they had never experienced before. One woman wrote, "For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about looking perfect. I was just being human." Lisa closed her laptop feeling confused. Part of her was intrigued by these stories. Another part was terrified. She had spent so many years hiding her insecurities that the idea of exposing them felt overwhelming. Monday morning brought its usual routine, but Lisa felt different. During her morning coffee, she caught herself staring at Maya's card, which she had moved to her kitchen counter. At work, she found it hard to concentrate. During lunch break, she walked to a nearby bookstore and found herself in the art section, flipping through books about figure drawing and human anatomy. The drawings were beautiful. They showed people of all ages, sizes, and shapes. Some focused on the curve of a shoulder, or the way light fell across a face. Others captured entire poses, showing the strength and grace of the human form. None of the drawings made Lisa think about flaws or imperfections. Instead, they made her think about stories and strength and the beauty of being alive. That evening, Lisa did something unusual. Instead of following her normal routine, she stood in front of her full-length bedroom mirror. really stood there and looked at herself. Not searching for problems or things to fix, but just looking. She tried to see herself the way an artist might see her, as a collection of lines and curves and shadows that told a story. It was harder than she expected. Years of focusing on her perceived flaws had trained her eyes to see problems first, but gradually she began to notice other things. The way her hair caught the light, the strength in her shoulders from years of swimming in high school, the laugh lines around her eyes that proved she had experienced joy. Tuesday brought rain and a busy day at work. Lisa threw herself into a big presentation, grateful for the distraction. But during her lunch break, she found herself thinking about Maya again. They had been such good friends in college. Maya had always encouraged Lisa to take chances, to speak up, to trust herself more. Lisa realized she missed having someone in her life who saw her potential instead of her limitations. Wednesday evening, Lisa made a decision. She picked up her phone and dialed Maya's number before she could change her mind. "Maya, it's Lisa, I got your card." Maya's voice was warm and excited. "I was hoping you would call. I've been thinking about you so much lately." They talked for an hour, catching up on the years between then and now. Maya told Lisa about her art studio, her students, and her passion for teaching. Lisa shared stories about her work, though she realized how small her world had become compared to Maya's vibrant creative life. Finally, Maya brought up the modeling opportunity again. "I know it sounds scary, but Lisa, you have no idea how much this could mean. Not just to my students, but to you. I've seen what happens when people find the courage to be truly seen. It changes everything." Lisa's hands were shaking as she held the phone. "I don't know if I'm brave enough, Maya. I'm not the same person I was in college. I've become someone who plays it safe." "That's exactly why you should do this," Maya replied gently. "That safe person you've become, she's protecting you, but she's also limiting you. What if there's another version of yourself waiting to be discovered?" After they hung up, Lisa sat in her quiet apartment thinking. She thought about the controlled life she had built, the walls she had constructed around herself. She thought about the woman in Maya's painting on the card. Confident, peaceful, unafraid to take up space in the world. For the first time in years, Lisa began to wonder what it might feel like to be that woman. She picked up the card one more time and read Maya's words. "Remember when we used to talk about doing something that scared us?" She did remember. In college, she and Maya had made a pact to push themselves beyond their comfort zones. They had promised each other they would choose courage over comfort, growth over safety. Somewhere along the way, Lisa had forgotten that promise, but maybe it wasn't too late to remember. That night, instead of her usual routine, Lisa sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and really considered Maya's invitation. She thought about all the ways fear had shaped her choices over the years, all the opportunities she had passed up, the risks she had avoided, the parts of herself she had kept hidden. Maybe Maya was right. Maybe there was another version of herself waiting to be discovered, a version that was brave enough to be seen, flaws and all. Lisa wasn't ready to say yes yet, but for the first time, she wasn't ready to say no either, and sometimes that's exactly where courage begins. 3 days passed after Lisa's phone call with Maya, and she couldn't stop thinking about their conversation. She found herself distracted at work, staring out the window during meetings, and lying awake at night wondering what it would feel like to be truly brave. On Saturday morning, Lisa did something she rarely did. She canceled her usual weekend plans. Instead of her organized grocery shopping and apartment cleaning routine, she decided to visit the local library. She wasn't exactly sure what she was looking for, but she felt drawn to learn more about courage and fear. In the psychology section, she found a book about overcoming anxiety and self-doubt. As she flipped through the pages, one chapter caught her attention: The Stories We Tell Ourselves. The author explained how people create mental stories about their limitations, and how these stories become so familiar that they feel like absolute truth. Lisa recognized herself immediately. For years, she had been telling herself the same story. She wasn't interesting enough, pretty enough, or brave enough to take big risks. She had become so comfortable with this story that challenging it felt dangerous. The book suggested starting with small acts of courage to build confidence for bigger changes. Lisa closed the book and made her first small decision. Instead of her usual corner table at the coffee shop, she would sit at the counter where she might have to talk to other customers. It seemed silly, But when Lisa ordered her coffee that afternoon, her heart was beating fast. She chose a seat at the busy counter and forced herself to make eye contact with the barista. When the woman next to her complimented her jacket, Lisa didn't just say a quick thank you and look away. Instead, she smiled and started a real conversation. "Thank you. I actually never wear bright colors, but I'm trying to step out of my comfort zone a bit," Lisa said. The woman laughed. "Good for you. I made the same decision last year. Now look at me." She gestured to her colorful scarf and bold earrings. "It's amazing how changing small things can make you feel completely different." They talked for 20 minutes about travel, work, and taking chances in life. When Lisa finally left the coffee shop, she felt lighter somehow. The interaction reminded her that most people were kind and accepting, not the harsh judges her imagination had created. Over the next week, Lisa continued her small experiments in courage. She spoke up in a work meeting to suggest a creative marketing campaign, something she would never have done before. Her colleagues liked the idea, and her boss asked her to develop it further. She wore a red dress that had been hanging in her closet with tags still attached. She even called her mother, a conversation she had been avoiding for weeks because her mom always had opinions about Lisa's choices. Each small success made the next one feel a little easier. Lisa began to understand that courage wasn't about never feeling afraid. It was about feeling afraid and choosing to act anyway. But Maya's invitation still felt enormous. Modeling for art students meant being seen completely, with no protective layers of professional clothes or careful makeup. It meant trusting strangers to look at her with kindness instead of judgment. Lisa found herself researching figure drawing more seriously. She watched online documentaries about famous artists and their models. She read interviews with people who had posed for art classes. Many of them described the experience as transformative, but Lisa still couldn't imagine herself in that situation. One evening, while browsing art websites, Lisa discovered something unexpected. Many of the most beautiful paintings and sculptures throughout history featured people who didn't match modern beauty standards. The women in Renaissance paintings had soft bellies and imperfect skin. Ancient statues showed bodies that were strong and real, not artificially perfect. This realization hit Lisa like a wave. Art had never been about perfection. It was about truth, about capturing the authentic beauty of being human. She began to see her own perceived flaws differently. The scar on her shoulder wasn't an imperfection to hide. It was part of her story, part of what made her uniquely herself. Lisa started paying attention to her own body in new ways. Instead of rushing through her morning routine, she took time to notice how her muscles moved when she stretched. She appreciated the strength in her hands as she typed at work. She even found herself grateful for her legs, which had carried her through thousands of miles of walking and running over the years. But the real breakthrough came during a conversation with her sister Rachel. Lisa had always admired Rachel's confidence and spontaneity. During their weekly phone call, Lisa found herself sharing her thoughts about Maya's invitation. "You know what I think?" Rachel said after listening to the whole story. "I think you've been hiding for so long that you've forgotten who you really are underneath all that protection." "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "Remember when we were kids and you would put on shows in the backyard? You would sing and dance and didn't care who was watching. You were so alive, so present. I've missed that version of my sister." Rachel's words stayed with Lisa for days. She did remember those childhood moments, the feeling of being completely herself without apology or fear. When had she lost that freedom? When had she decided that being seen was dangerous instead of joyful? The answer came to her gradually. It had happened slowly, through years of criticism and comparison. A teacher who made fun of her artwork in elementary school, classmates who teased her about her changing body in middle school, bosses who valued conformity over creativity. Each small wound had added another layer of protection until she had forgotten what it felt like to be truly open. But protection had come at a cost. Lisa realized she had been living a smaller life than she wanted, making safe choices that kept her invisible, but also kept her from experiencing real connection and growth. 2 weeks after Maya's call, Lisa made another small act of courage. She signed up for a beginner's drawing class at the same community art center where Maya taught. She told herself she just wanted to understand the artistic process better, but part of her hoped she might run into Maya. The drawing class was intimidating at first. Lisa sat in the back row, watching other students confidently sketch and shade. When the instructor asked them to draw a self-portrait, Lisa's hand started shaking. She had spent so many years avoiding really looking at herself that the assignment felt impossible. But as she worked, something shifted. The process of drawing forced her to study her own face with curiosity instead of criticism. She noticed the way light played across her cheekbones, the interesting shape of her eyes, the character in the lines around her mouth. For the first time in years, she saw herself as something worth capturing on paper. After class, Lisa walked slowly through the art center. She passed Maya's studio and could hear voices inside, students discussing their work with passion and excitement. Through the partially open door, she glimpsed easels arranged in a circle, ready for the next figure drawing session. Her heart raced, but this time the feeling wasn't entirely fear. Mixed with the anxiety was something else: anticipation, curiosity, maybe even excitement. Lisa stood in the hallway for several minutes, imagining herself in that room, part of that creative energy. When she got home that night, Lisa sat at her kitchen table with Maya's card and her phone. She had been carrying the card in her purse for weeks, reading Maya's words whenever she needed courage. "Remember when we used to talk about doing something that scared us?" Lisa thought about all the small, brave choices she had made recently. Each one had taught her something about herself, had shown her that she was stronger and more resilient than she had believed. Maybe it was time for a bigger leap, but not yet. Lisa wasn't quite ready to say yes, but she was getting closer. She could feel the old version of herself, the careful, controlled, hidden version, starting to make room for someone braver. That someone was still scared, but she was also curious. She was still uncertain, but she was also hopeful. And for now, that felt like enough progress. Lisa put Maya's card back in her purse and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring another opportunity to choose courage over comfort, growth over safety. And slowly, one small choice at a time, she was becoming the person she had always been meant to be. The morning of the art session, Lisa woke up before her alarm. She had barely slept, her mind spinning between excitement and pure terror. After 3 weeks of preparation and countless conversations with Maya, she had finally said yes. But now, lying in bed at 6 a.m., she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. Lisa's hands were shaking as she made her morning coffee. She had planned to eat breakfast, but her stomach felt like it was full of butterflies. Instead, she sat by her window, watching the sunrise and trying to calm her racing heart. Maya had told her to arrive at the studio by 9 a.m., which gave her 3 hours to either gather courage or completely lose her nerve. She took a long shower, hoping the warm water would relax her tense muscles. As she stood under the spray, Lisa thought about all the small, brave choices that had led to this moment. Speaking up at work meetings, wearing bright colors, taking that drawing class. Each step had felt impossible at the time, but each one had also shown her that she was stronger than she believed. After her shower, Lisa stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to wear. What did someone wear to their first figure drawing session? She finally chose simple clothes, a soft sweater and comfortable jeans. Nothing too complicated. Nothing that would make her feel more nervous than she already did. The drive to the art studio felt both endless and too short. Lisa found herself taking the long route, not quite ready to arrive. She stopped for gas she didn't need and spent 10 minutes in the parking lot of a grocery store, just breathing and watching normal people go about their normal Saturday morning routines. At 8:45 a.m., Lisa finally pulled into the art center parking lot. Maya's car was already there along with several others. Through the large windows, she could see people setting up easels and arranging supplies. Her future had arrived, whether she felt ready or not. Maya met her at the entrance with a warm hug and a reassuring smile. "I'm so proud of you for being here," she said quietly. "I know this took incredible courage." As they walked toward the studio, Maya explained what would happen. The students were advanced artists who had been working on figure drawing for months. They understood the professional nature of the session and treated models with complete respect. The pose would be held for 20 minutes at a time with breaks in between. Lisa could stop any time she felt uncomfortable. The studio was a large, bright room with tall windows that filled the space with natural light. About 15 easels were arranged in a semicircle around a small raised platform in the center. The platform had a simple chair and some draped fabric. but otherwise the space felt open and welcoming. Students began arriving around 9 a.m. They were a mix of ages and backgrounds: college students, retirees, working professionals who took art classes on weekends. Lisa watched them set up their supplies with focused concentration. Their serious approach to their craft helped her remember that this was about art, not judgment. Maya introduced Lisa to the group simply, "This is Lisa, and she's helping us practice our figure drawing today. Please treat her with the same respect and focus you would give any professional model." The students nodded and returned to preparing their materials. No one stared or made comments. They seemed more interested in checking their pencils and adjusting their easels than in studying Lisa. Their professional attitude helped calm her nerves slightly. Maya walked Lisa to a small changing area behind a curtain. "Take your time," she said gently. "Remember, once you step onto that platform, you're not Lisa the marketing manager or Lisa the daughter or Lisa the woman with insecurities. You're simply a human being helping artists learn to see. That's all." Alone behind the curtain, Lisa took several deep breaths. She looked at herself in the small mirror and made a decision. Today, she would not focus on her perceived flaws or worry about what others might think. Today, she would simply be present and brave. The moment of truth arrived faster than Lisa expected. She wrapped herself in the soft robe Maya had provided and stepped out from behind the curtain. The studio had grown quiet, with students ready at their easels, pencils poised. The walk from the changing area to the platform felt like the longest journey of Lisa's life. Each step represented a choice to continue forward instead of running back to safety. Her feet felt heavy, but she kept moving. Maya helped Lisa find a comfortable pose on the platform, sitting on the chair with one arm resting on the back, looking slightly to the left. It felt natural and strong, not artificial or awkward. Maya adjusted the draping and lighting until everything felt right. "Whenever you're ready," Maya said softly. Lisa closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about all the conversations and research that had brought her to this point. She thought about the Renaissance paintings she had studied, the interviews she had read with other models, the small acts of courage that had built her confidence. She thought about her sister's words about the fearless child she used to be. Then she opened her eyes, let the robe fall away, and looked directly at the students. The first few seconds were the hardest. Lisa felt exposed and vulnerable in a way she had never experienced before. But something remarkable happened as she watched the artists begin to work. They looked at her with concentration and respect, their eyes moving between her form and their paper as they tried to capture lines, shadows, and proportions. She realized they weren't seeing her flaws or making judgments about her body. They were seeing light and shadow, curves and angles, the way her shoulders connected to her neck, how her posture told a story of strength. They were seeing her as art. As the minutes passed, Lisa began to relax into the pose. Her breathing became steady and natural. The fear that had consumed her for weeks started to fade, replaced by something unexpected, a sense of peace and acceptance. She found herself studying the students as they studied her. She watched their faces as they worked, seeing the same concentration she had felt in her own drawing class. An elderly man with gentle eyes worked on capturing the way light fell across her arm. A young woman focused intently on the curve of Lisa's spine. A middle-aged student seemed fascinated by the shadows created by her pose. None of them looked at her with anything other than artistic interest and professional respect. Their serious dedication to their craft made Lisa feel valued and important, not vulnerable or exposed. During the first break, Lisa put the robe back on and walked around the room, looking at the sketches in progress. Each artist had seen something different in her pose. Some focused on her facial expression, others on the overall composition. Some drew bold, confident lines, while others worked with soft, delicate strokes. Seeing herself through so many different artistic perspectives was overwhelming in the best possible way. These weren't photographs that captured every detail and imperfection. These were interpretations that found beauty and meaning in her form, her posture, her presence. "How are you feeling?" Maya asked during the break. Lisa smiled, surprised by her own answer. "Free," she said. "I feel completely free." The second and third poses felt easier. Lisa found herself settling into each position with growing confidence. She discovered that holding still for 20 minutes gave her time to think and reflect in ways she rarely experienced in her busy daily life. By the end of the 2-hour session, something fundamental had changed inside Lisa. She had faced her deepest fear about being truly seen and discovered it wasn't nearly as scary as she had imagined. In fact, it was liberating. As she changed back into her clothes, Lisa felt different in her own skin. The same body that had walked into the studio that morning now felt like home in a way it never had before. She had been seen completely and accepted fully, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. The Monday morning after the art session, Lisa woke up feeling like a completely different person. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and saw someone new looking back. The same face, the same body, but something in her eyes had changed. There was a confidence there that hadn't existed before, a quiet strength that came from knowing she had faced her biggest fear and survived. At work that day, Lisa's colleagues immediately noticed something different about her. She walked taller, spoke more clearly, and most surprisingly, she actually shared her opinions in the morning team meeting. When her boss asked for creative ideas for their biggest client, Lisa raised her hand without hesitation. "I've been thinking about this campaign differently," she said, her voice steady and confident. "What if instead of playing it safe with the usual approach, we tried something bold? Something that would make people really pay attention?" Her boss leaned forward, interested. "Tell us more." Lisa presented an innovative marketing strategy that was completely different from anything their company had done before. It was risky, creative, and exactly the kind of idea she would have kept to herself just a week earlier. But something about being truly seen in that art studio had unlocked a part of her that was no longer afraid to be noticed. The room was quiet for a moment after she finished. Then her boss smiled widely. "Lisa, that's brilliant. I want you to lead this project. This could be exactly what we need to win this account." Lisa felt a rush of excitement and pride. For the first time in her career, she had taken a real creative risk, and it was paying off. Over the following weeks, she threw herself into the project with an energy and passion she hadn't felt in years. But the changes in Lisa's life went far beyond work. That weekend, she called her sister Rachel and shared the whole story of the art session. Rachel was amazed by the transformation she could hear in Lisa's voice. "You sound like the sister I remember from when we were kids," Rachel said, bold and alive and unafraid to take up space in the world. Inspired by this newfound courage, Lisa decided to reach out to other people she had lost touch with over the years. She called her college friend David, who was now a photographer living across the country. They had been close once, but Lisa had pulled away when her fears and insecurities started taking over her life. "Lisa, I can't believe you called," David said, his voice full of genuine warmth. "I've been thinking about you so much lately. How are you?" They talked for 2 hours, catching up on years of missed conversations. David told her about his photography business, his travels, and his recent divorce. Lisa found herself sharing more honestly than she had with anyone in years, talking about her fears, her growth, and her recent breakthrough at the art studio. "You modeled for an art class?" David asked, impressed. "That's incredible. I've been trying to get people to pose for my portrait photography for months, but everyone's too self-conscious." "You're braver than you know." Something in his voice made Lisa pause. "What kind of portrait photography?" David explained that he had been working on a project about authentic beauty, photographing real people in natural, unposed moments that captured their true selves. "It's not about perfect lighting or flawless skin," he said. "It's about finding the beauty that exists when people are just being genuinely themselves." Lisa surprised herself by asking, "Would you want to photograph me sometime?" The question hung in the air for a moment. The old Lisa would never have volunteered to be photographed, especially not in a project focused on natural beauty. But the new Lisa, the one who had discovered the power of being truly seen, was curious about what David might capture. "Are you serious?" David asked. "Because I would love that. I'll be in your city next month for a gallery showing. We could do the session then." After they hung up, Lisa sat in her quiet apartment thinking about how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. She was taking on challenging projects at work, reconnecting with old friends, and even volunteering to be photographed. Each brave choice seemed to make the next one easier. The following month, David arrived with his camera equipment and a gentle, professional approach that reminded Lisa of the art students who had drawn her with such respect and focus. They spent the afternoon in her apartment and at a nearby park, talking and laughing while he captured candid moments. "You're so natural in front of the camera," David said as they worked. Most people tense up, but you seem completely comfortable. Lisa laughed. I think modeling for that art class taught me something about being seen. It's not as scary as I thought it would be. The photos David took were beautiful in a way that surprised Lisa. They showed her laughing, thinking, looking out the window with peaceful concentration. In every image, she looked confident and genuine. Nothing like the self-conscious person she had been just months earlier. These are going to be part of my gallery show, David said as they reviewed the images together. Is that okay with you? Lisa looked at the photos again. In them, she saw a woman who was unafraid to be herself. Someone who had learned that being truly seen was a gift rather than a vulnerability. Yes, she said without hesitation. I'd be honored. The ripple effects of that first art session continued to spread through Lisa's life in unexpected ways. At work, her successful campaign led to a promotion and a raise. Her new confidence helped her build stronger relationships with her colleagues, who began coming to her for advice and creative input. In her personal life, Lisa started saying yes to invitations she would have declined before. She joined a hiking group, took a pottery class, and even signed up for a public speaking workshop. Each new experience taught her something else about herself and expanded her world a little further. But perhaps the most significant change was in how Lisa saw herself each morning in the mirror. Instead of looking for flaws and imperfections, she saw someone who had chosen courage over comfort, growth over safety. She saw someone who had learned that being vulnerable could be a source of strength rather than weakness. 6 months after that first art session, Lisa received an unexpected email from Maya Xiaorim. Of the students from that day had written an article about the power of figure, drawing, and wanted to interview Lisa about her experience. Your courage that day inspired everyone in the room, Maya wrote. This student wants to share your story to help other people find their own bravery. Would you be interested in talking with her? Lisa read the email twice, thinking about how far she had come. 6 months ago, the idea of sharing her story publicly would have terrified her. Now it felt like an opportunity to help others discover what she had learned. That the things we fear most about ourselves are often the very things that can set us free. She wrote back to Maya immediately. Yes, I'd love to share my story. If my experience can help even one person find their courage, then it will all have been worth it. As Lisa hit send, she smiled at the thought of how shocked her old self would be by this decision. But she wasn't her old self anymore. She was someone who had learned that being truly seen wasn't something to fear. It was something to celebrate. And this was just the beginning. 1 year after that life-changing art session, Lisa stood in front of her bathroom mirror getting ready for something she never could have imagined. Tonight was the opening of an art exhibition called Studies in Courage, featuring artwork from that transformative day at Maya's studio. Lisa would be the guest of honor, sharing her story with a room full of strangers. As she applied her makeup, Lisa thought about how different this morning routine felt compared to a year ago. Back then, she had used makeup to hide behind to create a perfect mask that would keep people from seeing the real her. Now she used it simply to enhance her natural features, comfortable with who she was underneath. The past year had been full of changes that still amazed her. The interview with Maya's student had led to a local newspaper article about her journey. That article had caught the attention of a community organization that asked Lisa to speak at their monthly meeting about overcoming fear. One speaking engagement had led to another, and now Lisa regularly shared her story with groups of people looking for courage in their own lives. Her work life had transformed completely. The creative campaign she had proposed that first Monday after the art session had won several industry awards and brought new clients to the company. Lisa was now the creative director, leading a team of talented people who looked to her for inspiration and guidance. The scared, silent woman who used to hide in the back of meetings was now someone who confidently presented to rooms full of executives. But perhaps the most surprising change was in her relationship with David, the photographer friend she had reconnected with. What had started as a simple portrait session had grown into something deeper. They had been dating for 6 months now, and Lisa had never felt more comfortable being herself with another person. David had taught her to see beauty in everyday moments, just as that first art session had taught her to see beauty in vulnerability. He photographed her often, not because she was a model, but because he loved capturing the genuine joy and confidence that now radiated from her in unguarded moments. "Are you nervous about tonight?" David asked as they drove to the art center together. Lisa considered the question seriously. "A little," she admitted. "But it's a different kind of nervous than I used to feel. It's more like excitement mixed with anticipation, not the paralyzing fear I used to know." The art center looked different than it had a year ago. Tonight it was filled with soft lighting, elegant displays, and groups of people admiring the artwork. But for Lisa, walking through those same doors brought back every emotion from that first terrifying and liberating morning. Maya greeted them at the entrance, her face glowing with pride and excitement. "Lisa, you look absolutely radiant. Are you ready to see yourself through 20 different artists' eyes?" The exhibition was breathtaking. Each piece from that day had been carefully mounted and displayed with small placards explaining the artist's approach and technique. Lisa walked slowly through the gallery, seeing herself interpreted in charcoal, pencil, paint, and even sculpture. One drawing focused entirely on her hands, capturing the way they had rested naturally on the chair. Another showed her face in profile, emphasizing the determined expression she had worn. A painting in soft watercolors had captured the play of light across her shoulder, turning what she had always seen as an imperfection into something beautiful and artistic. But the piece that moved her most was a simple charcoal sketch that had captured her eyes in that moment when she had first looked directly at the class. The artist had somehow drawn not just her physical features, but the exact moment when fear had transformed into courage. "This is incredible," David whispered as they moved through the exhibition. "You can see your journey in every single piece. Each artist saw something different, but they all captured your strength." As the evening progressed, people began approaching Lisa to share how her story had affected them. A woman in her 50s told her about finally leaving a job she hated to start her own business. A young man shared that he had found the courage to perform his music at an open mic night. A teacher explained how she had started using Lisa's story to help her students overcome their fear of public speaking. "I read about you in the newspaper," said an elderly woman with kind eyes. "My granddaughter has been struggling with body image issues, and I shared your article with her. She's been talking about taking an art class herself." Each conversation reminded Lisa that her decision to be vulnerable that day had created ripples far beyond her own life. Her courage had given other people permission to be brave, to face their own fears, and to discover their own strength. The highlight of the evening came when Maya introduced Lisa to speak to the gathered crowd. A year ago, the thought of addressing a room full of people would have sent Lisa into a panic. Tonight, she walked to the front of the gallery with steady steps and a calm heart. "A year ago, I was terrified to be seen," Lisa began, her voice clear and confident. "I had spent so many years hiding behind professional clothes, careful words, and safe choices that I had forgotten who I really was underneath all that protection." She told the story of Maya's invitation, her weeks of preparation, and that transformative morning in the studio. She talked about the small acts of courage that had followed, the opportunities that had opened up, and the relationships that had deepened when she learned to show up authentically. "Being truly seen turned out to be nothing like I had imagined," Lisa continued. "I thought it would be about judgment and criticism. Instead, it was about acceptance and connection. I thought it would make me vulnerable in a weak way. Instead, it made me vulnerable in a powerful way." The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. Lisa could see her own past fears reflected in some faces, and her current confidence inspiring others. "The most important thing I learned is that courage isn't about never being afraid," she said, as she neared the end of her talk. "Courage is about feeling afraid and choosing to act anyway. It's about understanding that the things we're most scared of are often the very things that can set us free." When she finished speaking, the applause was warm and sustained. People approached her afterward with tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories of fear and breakthrough. Several asked if she offered coaching or workshops to help others find their courage. As the evening wound down, Lisa found herself back in Maya's studio, now empty except for the two old friends. They sat in the same chairs where Lisa had first heard about the modeling opportunity that had changed everything. "I'm so proud of you," Maya said, reaching over to squeeze Lisa's hand. "That scared woman who walked in here a year ago has become someone who helps other people find their bravery. That's the most beautiful transformation I've ever witnessed." Lisa looked around the studio, remembering every detail of that first morning. The nervous walk across the room, the moment she had let the robe fall away. The gradual realization that being seen was a gift rather than a punishment. "Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself," Lisa said. "Thank you for believing I was brave before I knew it was true." As they prepared to leave, Maya handed Lisa a small wrapped package. Inside was the charcoal sketch that had captured her eyes in that moment of transformation. "This belongs to you," Maya said. "It's a reminder of the moment you chose courage over comfort, growth over safety. The moment you decided to be truly seen." Lisa held the drawing carefully, studying the eyes that looked back at her. They belonged to someone who had learned that being vulnerable was not a weakness to overcome, but a strength to embrace. Someone who understood that the most beautiful thing about being human is the courage to show up authentically, imperfections and all. That night, Lisa hung the drawing in her bedroom where she would see it every morning. It would remind her daily that she was someone who had faced her biggest fear and discovered it was actually her greatest gift, and whenever she felt afraid of taking the next big risk or sharing the next difficult truth, she would look at those drawn eyes and remember she was someone who had crossed the room, chosen courage, and never looked away. The woman in the mirror had finally learned to see herself clearly, and she was beautiful exactly as she was.